When the Germans launched their offensive through the Ardennes forest on December 16th of 1944, well, they had already been at war for over 5 years. And there's something about warfare that the longer it goes, the crueler it gets. We really see that here in the Battle of the Bulge in places like Malmedy and Wereth. And in a field on the other side of this monument right here, that was a casualty clearing station for the 326 Medical Company. So when the Battle of the Bulge kicked off on December 16th, it was all hands on deck from the U.S. military to try and just plug the breach that the Germans had blasted open in the Ardennes. One of the units that was going to be sent to the area of Bastogne was the 101st Airborne Division. The area of Bastogne was very important because it was a road network where 7 different roads came together. Well, right here is where the 326 Airborne Medical Company was going to be setting up their operations, right here close to this road. And this was not only a military crisis, it was also a refugee crisis because the citizens in this area were trying to get away from the Germans as they were pushing through this area. So you can imagine on this road where we have so much traffic today, just imagine floods of local citizens moving through here, with carts or with, bags or whatever possessions they had, and they're coming from both directions, and they're trying to get ahead of this German offensive and get away from what they know is coming. This is an area that had already seen war or seen combat a couple of times. Well, there were some German troops in the area that ended up kind of intermingling with the crowd. They had like civilian coats that they threw on over their uniforms, and they got up to this point right here. Now, if we walk into this field, we have to use our imagination a little bit, because obviously we're just looking at a crop field today. But imagine this field being covered in medical tents. And already on December the 19th, you have wounded who are coming in and are being treated. Well, these German soldiers who have intermingled with the crowd end up surrounding this spot, and right on cue start pouring gunfire into the 326 Airborne Medical Company. They're shooting into the tents, they're shooting different soldiers, and they end up taking a lot of prisoners here, and the ones who are not ambulatory, who can't move, they just shoot them in their bed. Okay, so this is one of the massacres that occurs here in the Battle of the Bulge. Reg Jans, who's a legendary local guide around here, was telling us about one individual right over in this area who crawled out. He was wounded, crawled out underneath one of his tents, or underneath his tent, and had a bayonet and was sticking it into the ground and dragging himself across the ground until he got to the woods and could get away. So there was just an awful scene that took place here on December 19th. And with us today, we have a few of the artifacts of one of the survivors of this massacre.
So we're standing at the 101st Airborne Monument for the 326 Medical Company, and I'm holding the medical kit of one of the men from that company, Raymond S. Gebhardt, who is from Maryland. And I have a couple other artifacts of his that I brought back today. Now his story is really unique because a lot of the guys from the 326 Medical Company were either captured or killed or wounded here in Bastogne. Gebhardt is one of the few guys that actually got away once the Germans overran this position. He fled. He was an ambulance driver and a stretcher bearer, and he was out collecting wounded, and he saw what was happening here, and he was able to get away, and he was actually hidden by some local people and avoided capture, and that's extremely rare. There wasn't a whole lot of guys that got away from this spot.
We've opened up this medical kit so that we can take a little closer look on the inside. So here you see, some different, scissors, and looks like maybe a pair of tweezers and maybe a scalpel. Just a pocket surgical kit that, that Raymond would have had on him when he was here in 1944. We also have this right here. So obviously there on the bottom we have one of his dog tags, and then on top, well, that is a combat medical badge. Now he would not have had that here in 1944 because that didn't come out until later in the war. And then of course it's always nice when we can have a photo of the veteran to kind of put a face with a name. But we also have a few other photos that Raymond had right here with us today.
We have a few other photos here of Raymond Gebhardt. I made some copies of them, and I wanted to point out that the 326 Medical Company had some paratroopers and some glider-trained troopers, and Raymond Gebhardt was a glider-trained trooper. The family of Raymond Gebhardt, which are fairly local to Gettysburg, they were from Maryland, they donated his items several years ago, and we have some other items. We have his uniform and some of his medals and some of his war trophies. And one of the things that he brought home, also I wanted to point out, were some German photos. He had some photos that he of German soldiers that were from men that he actually treated. So he treated both Americans and Germans. Also, he was wounded in later in the war. I think it was in March or April of 1945. But interesting story that he was able to get away. One of the few guys that got away from the German slaughter that happened here.
We've shown a few little bits of this memorial, but I want to take a moment here to show it up close. So here, of course, you have the division insignia for the 101st Airborne, and also paratrooper wings, glider wings, and then there in the middle, the combat medical badge. And then down here, it says, in the field behind this monument, the division clearing station of the 326 Airborne Medical Company was overrun by enemy forces. On the night of December 19th, 1944, enemy forces attacked with armored vehicles and infantry. The hospital was sprayed by machine gun fire for a period of 15 minutes, and many soldiers were killed or wounded. Those who survived the attack became prisoners of war. This site is to memorialize all the victims and to honor the 326 Airborne Medical Company and all other medical units who served during World War II. They had their rendezvous with destiny. May this monument be a symbol of honor for those brave men and women who were willing to give their lives while saving others. Some came home, but so many didn't. May the world never forget. All right, well, there you go. That was just a few of the artifacts and a few of the stories of the awful events that took place here in this field with the 326th Airborne Medical Company on December 19th of 1944.